Hello, my amazing listener. Welcome back to Fluent English Journey, the channel where we don't just learn English, we grow through it. I'm really glad you're here today because we're going to talk about something a little different, but very powerful, metacognition. Now, that's a big word, isn't it? Metacognition. It might sound complicated, and maybe you don't hear it every day. But don't worry. By the end of this episode, you'll understand not only what it means, but also how it can help you in real life, whether it's learning English, making decisions, or improving yourself. So, let's start simple. What is metacognition? Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. That's it. It's when you step back and notice how your mind works. Imagine your brain is like a movie, and you're watching yourself think. You're not just doing something, you're aware of how and why you're doing it. Let's look at an example. Say you're learning English vocabulary. If you just read the words again and again without thinking about how you learn best, most of the words might disappear from your memory. But if you pause and ask yourself, do I remember better by writing the words, saying them out loud, or using flashcards? That's metacognition. You're learning not only the words, but also how you learn. Why does this matter? Because many of us go through life on autopilot. We do things without thinking why we do them. We make the same mistakes again and again because we're not aware of our thoughts. But when you understand your thinking, you can make better choices, learn faster, and grow more deeply. You can respond thoughtfully instead of just reacting. Metacognition gives you a little space between action and reaction. And that space is powerful. In that space, you can ask yourself questions like, why am I feeling this way? Is this belief really true? Is there another way I could see this? Just asking these questions can slowly change the way you think. It's especially useful when you're learning something new, like English. Maybe you've faced challenges, felt nervous speaking, or got stuck. Metacognition helps you notice those moments, understand them, and find better strategies. It reminds you that learning English isn't just about learning words or grammar, it's about learning how to learn. Today, we'll explore metacognition deeply. We'll see what it really means, how it shows up in everyday life, and how you can practice it to become a more confident, thoughtful, and effective learner. Let's take this journey together, because the more you understand your mind, the more control you have over your life. Ready? Let's dive in. Now, let's break down the word itself. Meta plus cognition. Understanding a word's roots can help us really grasp its meaning. Meta means beyond or about itself. Cognition means thinking or knowledge. So metacognition literally means thinking about thinking. It's noticing your thoughts, understanding how your mind works, and using that awareness to learn and grow better. The word metacognition actually helps a lot once we break it down. It's made up of two parts, meta and cognition. Let's start with cognition. This comes from the Latin word cognoscere, which means to know or to understand. So when we talk about cognition, we're talking about all the mental processes your brain uses, how you think, understand, remember, and learn. Every time you solve a problem, make a decision, understand a sentence, or learn a new idea, that's cognition. Basically, it's everything your brain does when it's working in the world. Now, the first part, meta, comes from Greek and means beyond, above, or about. When we combine them, meta plus cognition, it literally means thinking about thinking or going beyond just thinking. I know it might sound a bit strange at first, thinking about thinking, but that's exactly what it is. It's like taking a step back and looking at your own mind, not with your eyes, of course, but with awareness. Imagine holding up a mental mirror and watching what's happening inside your head. That's metacognition. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine you're walking through a forest. On the ground, you can only see the trees right in front of you. But now imagine rising in a hot air balloon. From above, you can see the whole forest, the trees, rivers, paths, and even where you came from and where you might go. That view from above is like a bird's eye view of your brain. You're not just in your thoughts, you're observing them from a higher place. That's what metacognition does. Let's look at another example. Say you're reading something in English and your mind starts wandering. Maybe you've read the same sentence 3 times but didn't understand it. We've all been there. If you just keep reading, you might not learn much. But if you pause and think, wait, I'm not focusing. I should slow down. That's metacognition in action. You're noticing what your brain is doing and choosing a better approach. You can think of it like being a coach for your own mind. Not just a player running around, but the coach on the sidelines, saying, maybe we need a new strategy here. And like any good coach, you don't judge yourself. You observe, reflect, and adjust. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be curious about how you think. The truth is, most of us already use metacognition, we just don't always notice it. For example, when you ask yourself, did I understand what I just read? When you think, this is hard for me. Maybe I need to try a different way. That's metacognition. It happens in small moments, during learning, while making decisions, and even in conversations. Another way to think about it is like mental self-awareness. Just like emotional intelligence helps us notice how we feel, metacognition helps us notice how we think. It gives us the power to slow down and ask, what's really happening in my mind right now? Sometimes, you might catch yourself thinking things like, wait, is this the best way to handle this? Am I being fair to myself right now? Why do I keep telling myself I can't do this? These are small moments of metacognition when you pause and check in with your own mind. Now, I want to be very clear, metacognition is not the same as overthinking. Overthinking is when your mind goes in circles, worrying about everything, feeling stuck, and never taking action. Metacognition, on the other hand, is helpful reflection. It's about understanding your thoughts, guiding them, and making better decisions, not getting trapped in them. The great news? Metacognition is a skill you can practice. You're not born with it or without it, it's something you develop over time. The more you practice, the more control you gain over your learning, your emotions, and your choices. You become more intentional, more focused, and more confident. So, next time you feel stuck, maybe in a task, trying to learn something new, or just trying to calm your mind, pause. Step outside of your thinking for a moment. Ask yourself, what's really going on in my mind right now? That small question can be the start of something powerful. At its simplest, metacognition means thinking about your thinking. It's a big word, but the idea is simple. Imagine your brain is like a computer. Metacognition is like the software that helps you watch how the computer works. It's the ability to notice and understand how you learn, solve problems, and make decisions. When you practice metacognition, you become more aware of your thoughts. Instead of doing things automatically, you stop and ask yourself questions like, how am I doing this? Is this method helping me? This awareness gives you control over your learning and behavior. For example, if you realize that reading quietly helps you remember words better than listening, you can choose to read more. That's how metacognition helps you become a better learner. Metacognition also helps with planning, monitoring, and reflecting. Planning. Before starting a task, ask, what steps should I take? What problems might I face? Monitoring. During the task, notice your progress and adjust your actions if needed. Reflecting. After the task, think about what worked and what didn't. This simple cycle, plan, monitor, reflect, is at the heart of metacognition. Why is it so important? Because it helps you learn more effectively. When you understand your own thinking, you can correct mistakes, improve your skills, build confidence. Metacognition helps you become independent, not just following instructions, but making smart decisions about how you learn and act. And here's the best part. The more you practice it, the more you'll notice improvements in many areas of your life, not just in studying English, but in problem solving, decision making, and handling challenges. In short, metacognition is like being your own coach. You watch how you think, reflect on it, and guide yourself to better results. It's a skill that can truly change the way you learn, grow, and live. When you practice metacognition, you start to understand your habits and guide yourself to learn and grow more effectively. And the more you do it, the easier learning becomes, the more interesting it feels, and the more rewarding it is. So, why is metacognition so important? Now that we know it means thinking about your thinking, let's see how it really helps in everyday life. You might be wondering, okay, this sounds interesting, but how does it actually help me? Here's the truth. Metacognition is one of the most powerful tools for learning, decision-making, and personal growth. And it's not just for students or psychologists, it's for everyone every day. Think about this. Have you ever studied hard for a test, read the same page over and over, and felt like nothing was sticking? Or tried learning English, listening to podcasts, reading books, memorizing vocabulary, but still felt like your speaking wasn't improving? That's where metacognition comes in. It helps you pause and think about how you're learning. Instead of just doing more and more, you ask, is this actually working for me? Maybe you discover that you remember words better when you use them in real conversations or teach them to someone else. Once you notice that, you can change your strategy. That's metacognition. It saves you time, energy, and frustration. Metacognition also helps in stressful situations, like giving a presentation or speaking in public. Even in your own language, it's normal to feel nervous. But by noticing your thoughts, like, what if I make a mistake, or what if people laugh at me, you can start to challenge them. You might ask, is this thought really true, or what's the worst that could happen? Just by observing your thinking, you start to take back control. You learn to calm your mind, stay focused, and perform better under pressure. And it's not just about learning or public speaking. Metacognition is also useful in conflicts or emotional situations. Maybe you have a disagreement with a friend, a misunderstanding with family, or a tough conversation at work. In those moments, it's easy to react quickly, say something you regret, or shut down. But metacognition gives you a moment of space. It helps you ask, what am I feeling right now? Why am I feeling this? What's the best way to respond? Even just a few seconds of awareness can change everything. It turns a reaction into a thoughtful response. You choose your words carefully and act with understanding. That's emotional intelligence, and it starts with metacognition. Here's another thing to consider. Have you ever noticed how your own thoughts can get in your way? Thoughts like, I can't do this. I'm not smart enough. I always fail. These thoughts feel real, but often they're just mental habits. Metacognition helps you see these habits, question them, and change them over time. Sometimes, our thoughts are just old beliefs that keep repeating themselves. And if we never stop to notice them, we start believing them without question. This is where metacognition comes in. It helps you catch those thoughts and ask, wait a second, is this really true? That one simple question can open the door to a completely new way of thinking and living. So, why is metacognition important? Because it helps you learn better, grow faster, and become more confident. It helps you become aware and in control of your life. Without it, we often repeat the same mistakes, not because we're lazy or not smart, but because we're not thinking about how we think. We don't notice the patterns behind our actions. When you practice metacognition regularly, you start seeing things you never noticed before. You begin to understand yourself better, your strengths, weaknesses, habits, and fears. You stop living on autopilot and start living with purpose. You don't just go through life, you grow through life. The best part? You don't need anything fancy to start. No special journal, no expensive course. All you need is a few quiet minutes and the courage to ask yourself simple questions like, how did I do today? What could I have done differently? What was I thinking when I made that choice? These simple questions can lead to big insights. Whether you want to improve your English, change a habit, prepare for a challenge, or understand yourself better, metacognition is your starting point. It's like turning on a light inside your brain. You see more clearly, act more wisely, and grow more deeply. Honestly, once you start using it, you'll wonder how you ever lived without it. Metacognition in daily life. Now that we know what metacognition is and why it matters, let's see how it shows up in daily life. The truth is, metacognition isn't just for study time or classrooms. It can help you in everyday decisions, habits, and emotions. And once you start noticing it, you'll see how useful it really is. Let's start with something many of us struggle with: procrastination. Have you ever had a task to do, like replying to an email, studying for a test, or cleaning your room, but instead found yourself scrolling on your phone, watching videos, or doing everything else except that one thing? That's procrastination. Metacognition helps you pause and ask yourself, why am I putting this off? Maybe the task feels boring. Or maybe you're afraid you won't do it perfectly. Often, procrastination isn't laziness. It's perfectionism in disguise. We delay tasks because we want them to be perfect. And if we're unsure we can do them perfectly, we avoid them altogether. Metacognition helps you notice that pattern. And when you notice it, you can change it. You can say, I'm afraid of doing this wrong, but doing something is better than doing nothing. Another common situation is overthinking. Have you ever lain in bed, thinking about something that happened, going over it again and again, and feeling stuck? That's your mind in overdrive. Metacognition helps you step back from those thoughts, notice what's happening, and decide how to respond instead of just spinning in circles. Have you ever had one of those moments where you keep thinking about something that happened during the day? Maybe you said something awkward, or maybe you're worried about what someone thinks of you. Your brain starts spinning, creating 100 what-ifs. What if they misunderstood me? What if I made a mistake? What if I look stupid? It happens to all of us. But this is actually a perfect moment to practice metacognition. You can pause and ask yourself, is this thought helping me? If the answer is no, if it's just making you feel worse without solving anything, then maybe it's time to let it go. You can shift your mindset by reminding yourself, I did my best, and that's enough. One moment doesn't define who I am. This kind of self-awareness doesn't stop overthinking completely, but it helps you take a step back and stop the cycle before it grows too big. Let me share a quick personal story. It's small, but it really shows how powerful this can be. A few months ago, I was working on a podcast episode. I wanted it to be helpful, inspiring, and easy to follow. I had some ideas written down, but I kept deleting my notes and rewriting them. I kept telling myself, this isn't good enough. It doesn't sound right. It's not perfect yet. I spent hours trying to fix every small detail. And then it hit me, I wasn't really writing anymore. I was stuck in perfectionism. That's when I used metacognition. I stopped and asked myself, what am I doing? Why am I being so hard on myself? The answer was clear. I was afraid people wouldn't like it. But once I said that out loud, I felt lighter. I reminded myself, it's okay to improve, but it's also okay to start messy. Progress is better than perfection. That small shift in thinking helped me finish the episode and feel proud of what I had done, even if it wasn't 100% perfect. Another place where metacognition can help a lot is with planning and consistency. Maybe you've tried to start a new habit like waking up early, going to the gym, or studying English for 30 minutes a day. At first, you feel motivated. But after a few days, life gets busy. You skip one day, then two, and suddenly the habit is gone. It's easy to feel disappointed in yourself. But instead of giving up, try metacognition. Ask yourself, what stopped me from being consistent? Maybe you were too tired at night. Maybe your plan wasn't realistic. Maybe you didn't have reminders or support. The point isn't to blame yourself. It's to understand yourself. When you reflect like this, you can adjust your plan. Maybe you study in the morning instead of at night. Maybe you set smaller goals. And most importantly, you learn that being consistent doesn't mean being perfect. It means coming back again and again, even after you fall off track. Finally, one powerful way to bring metacognition into daily life is through journaling. Writing in a journal isn't just for writers or creative people. It's for anyone who wants to become more self-aware. When you write about your day, your feelings, or your thoughts, you start to see patterns. You notice what makes you feel stressed, what gives you energy, and what kind of mindset you usually carry, positive, negative, or somewhere in between. You can then start asking yourself better questions. What worked well today? What do I want to change tomorrow? What thoughts are holding me back? Journaling gives your brain a place to reflect, pause, and notice what's happening inside your mind. It's like shining a light on your own thoughts. And once you start seeing them clearly, you can guide yourself to make better choices and grow every day. Even just asking yourself questions like, which thoughts are lifting me up? Which thoughts are bringing me down? And spending just 5 minutes a day reflecting on them can make a huge difference in how clearly you see yourself. Metacognition in daily life isn't about being perfect or overanalyzing everything. It's about building a habit of self-awareness, learning to notice your thoughts, reflect on them, and guide them in a healthier direction. Whether it's dealing with procrastination, overthinking, perfectionism, or planning, you always have the chance to pause, reflect, and move forward with more clarity. And that's how real growth happens. Not by changing everything overnight, but by becoming a little more aware, a little more mindful every single day. The two main parts of metacognition. So far, we've talked about what metacognition is, why it matters, and how to use it in daily life. Now, let's go a little deeper, not too technical, just enough to understand how it works in our minds. Metacognition actually has two main parts: metacognitive knowledge, metacognitive regulation. Don't worry, these aren't complicated. Once you hear what they mean, you'll realize you're already using both in different parts of your life. 1. Metacognitive knowledge. Metacognitive knowledge is simply what you know about your own thinking. It's the part of metacognition that involves awareness. It means understanding things like how you learn best, what you struggle with, which strategies work for you. For example, maybe you learn better when you say things out loud instead of reading silently. Maybe you notice that when you're tired or stressed, it's harder to stay focused. This awareness, knowing your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to thinking and learning, is metacognitive knowledge. It also includes knowing about different types of tasks and learning methods. For example, writing an essay requires a different approach than preparing for a speaking exam. Memorizing new vocabulary works better when you connect new words to real-life examples rather than just translating them. This kind of knowledge helps you prepare smarter, not just harder. Here's a simple example. Imagine you're trying to learn 20 new English words. Someone with strong metacognitive knowledge will stop and ask, "What's the best way for me to remember these?" Maybe they group words into categories like food, travel, or work. Or maybe they write full sentences using the words instead of just lists, so they see how the words are used in real conversations. These kinds of decisions come from understanding how your mind works. 2. Metacognitive regulation. The second part is metacognitive regulation. This is all about managing your thinking. It's not just about knowing how you think. It's about using that knowledge to guide your learning, solve problems, and stay on track. This part is more active. It includes things like planning how you'll approach a task, monitoring your progress while working on it, making adjustments if things aren't going as planned. Metacognitive regulation is what turns awareness into action. It helps you take control of your learning and your life, rather than just letting your mind wander or reacting automatically. Sometimes, you might notice that something isn't working with the way you're learning or doing a task. In short, Metacognition is about being in control of your mental process, not just going through the motions. Let's go back to that vocabulary example. You decided to learn 20 new words by writing them in sentences. That's metacognitive knowledge. You know the best way to learn for yourself. But metacognitive regulation is what happens next. As you practice, you might ask yourself, is this actually helping me remember the words? Maybe halfway through, you notice that you're still forgetting some words. So you pause and think, okay, maybe I need to use these words in a voice recording or talk to a friend using them. That's regulation. You're not just doing the task automatically. You're checking how well it's working and, if needed, changing your method. You use metacognitive regulation in other areas of life too. For example, if you focus better in the morning, you might schedule your hardest tasks early. If you're studying for an exam, you might take short breaks every 30 minutes to stay fresh. These small but smart choices are all part of metacognitive regulation. You're not just reacting to life, you're actively shaping your experience based on what you know about how you think. A big part of regulation is self-monitoring, checking in with yourself as you go. For example, during a conversation in English, you might notice, wait, I'm using the same two phrases again and again. That awareness helps you adjust. Maybe you try a new phrase you recently learned, or slow down your speaking to think more clearly. After the conversation, you reflect, what went well? What can I do better next time? That reflection is also metacognitive regulation. You're reviewing your performance and planning your next steps. Another part of regulation is evaluating your results. Imagine you tried a new study technique for a week, watching short English videos and writing a short summary every day. After a few days, you check in with yourself. Is this helping me? Do I feel more confident? Am I remembering more? If the answer is yes, you keep going. If not, you adjust. Maybe the videos are too difficult. Maybe you need subtitles. Maybe it's better to watch one video 3 times instead of 3 different ones. The point is, you adapt based on what works, rather than sticking to the same strategy blindly. So to sum it up, metacognitive knowledge is what you know about your thinking. Metacognitive regulation is how you manage it. The two work together. First, you become aware of how your brain works. Then you use that knowledge to plan better, make smarter choices, and grow faster. It's like being the driver of your own mind, not just letting it run on autopilot, but choosing the direction and adjusting the speed along the way. The beautiful thing is, both parts can be learned and improved. You don't need to be a genius. You just need to start asking yourself thoughtful questions. What works for me? What doesn't? What can I do differently next time? Over time, the more you practice, the more naturally metacognition becomes part of your thinking. Next time you sit down to learn something, face a challenge, or solve a problem, you'll already know how to watch, adjust, and improve. Before we go further, take a moment and ask yourself, what do I already know about my thinking? How can I guide myself using that knowledge? That's the real power of metacognition. Not just noticing your thoughts, but using that awareness to make smarter choices and grow. Common barriers to metacognition. So far, we've talked about what metacognition is, why it's important, and how to use it in everyday life. But here's the honest truth. Sometimes it's not that easy. Even if you understand how helpful self-reflection can be, there are moments when you don't do it. Or maybe you try, but something inside you blocks it. That's why it's important to understand the most common barriers to metacognition, the things that make it hard to think clearly about your thinking. 1. Self-doubt. One of the biggest barriers is self-doubt. Have you ever started learning something new, like a language, a skill, or a personal goal, and thought to yourself, I'm not smart enough for this. I'll never get it. That voice inside your head, telling you that you're not good enough, is a major roadblock. When you doubt yourself, you stop trying to understand your own learning process. Instead of asking, how can I improve, you might ask, what's wrong with me? See the difference? One question helps you grow, the other keeps you stuck. Self-doubt makes it easy to get trapped in your own head, thinking about everything that could go wrong instead of focusing on what could go right. 2. Negative self-talk. Closely connected to self-doubt is negative self-talk. This is the inner voice that says things like, "I always mess things up. Why do I even try?" Sometimes we don't even notice it. It becomes automatic. But this kind of thinking makes it very hard to reflect honestly, because if you already believe you'll fail, you don't give yourself the chance to learn from mistakes. Instead, every mistake feels like proof that you're not good enough. Of course, that's not true, but the way we talk to ourselves has a huge impact. If you're always talking yourself out of trying, how will you ever know what you're capable of? 3. Fear of failure. Another big barrier is fear of failure. This one is tricky because it often hides behind other feelings. Maybe you avoid trying something new, not because you're lazy or uninterested, but because deep down you're afraid you won't succeed. You might tell yourself, "I'll start next week. I'll do it when I feel ready." But sometimes that readiness never comes because fear keeps you from starting at all. The truth is, failure is not the enemy. Failure is part of learning. Metacognition helps us see failure not as the end, but as information, a message that says, "This didn't work, let's try another way." 4. Culture and education. Let's step back and look at something even bigger: culture and education. In some cultures, or even some schools, people are not encouraged to think about their thinking. You're often told to memorize, follow instructions, and get the right answer. If you ask too many questions, you might be seen as difficult. If you reflect out loud or share your thoughts, you might be judged. This can make metacognition feel strange or uncomfortable. Many people grow up with the message, "Just do it. Don't think too much." And if you've ever received that message, it can be hard to pause, reflect, and notice your own thinking, but it's exactly what metacognition asks you to do. This section could naturally lead into how to overcome these barriers and make metacognition a part of your daily life. Metacognition is all about thinking, not overthinking everything, but slowing down, becoming aware, and choosing how you respond. Think about how many school systems work. Students are often trained to focus only on results, the grades, the scores, the marks, and not on the process of learning. When that happens, people start to believe that making a mistake means they're not smart. Instead of reflecting on why something went wrong, they just feel ashamed. Over time, this creates a mindset where reflection feels uncomfortable or even painful. But here's the truth. Real learning doesn't come from always getting it right. Real learning comes from understanding your journey, your process, your habits, and your growth. And then there's modern distractions. Today, we're constantly surrounded by notifications, messages, videos, and noise. It's easy to move from one thing to the next without ever stopping to think. Metacognition requires space to pause, reflect, and ask yourself meaningful questions. But when your mind is always busy, you move through life in automatic mode. The more distracted you are, the less self-aware you become. Here's the good news. Just because these barriers exist doesn't mean you can't overcome them. The first step is simple but powerful. Notice them. When you catch yourself thinking, "I'm not smart enough," pause and ask, "Is that true, or is it just fear talking?" When you realize you've been avoiding something because you're afraid to fail, be honest about it. You don't have to pretend to be fearless. You just need to take one small step forward, even if you feel nervous. And if your culture or past experience didn't teach you to reflect, that's okay. You can start now. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to be curious. Ask yourself simple questions. What am I thinking right now? Why did I react that way? What can I try differently next time? At first, these questions might feel awkward. But over time, they become a habit, a healthy, powerful habit that changes how you learn and live. Yes, There are real barriers to metacognition: self-doubt, negative self-talk, fear, cultural silence, even distraction. But the biggest barrier of all is believing that change is impossible. And that's simply not true. Change is always possible, especially when you begin by changing the way you think about your thinking. How to practice metacognition. Now that we understand what metacognition is, why it's important, and what can get in the way, let's talk about the most valuable part: how to actually practice it. Metacognition isn't just a theory, it's a skill. And like any skill, the more you practice, the better you get. You don't need a textbook or a teacher to get started. What you really need is curiosity, a little bit of time, a willingness to think more deeply about how you learn, act, and respond to the world around you. One of the simplest ways to practice metacognition is by taking a few minutes each day to pause and reflect. This can be done anytime: after you finish a task, before you start something important, even in the middle of an activity. The key is to create a moment of awareness, notice your thoughts, and ask yourself thoughtful questions. These are what we call mental check-ins. You take a moment to pause and ask yourself simple questions like, what am I doing right now? Why am I doing it this way? Is this really working? These small questions might seem simple, but they can make a big difference. Why? Because they stop you from running on autopilot. And that's exactly where real change begins. Growth starts with awareness. Growth happens when we stop going through life automatically and start living with awareness. Imagine you're studying English vocabulary. Instead of just scrolling through the word list quickly, take a moment to ask yourself, am I remembering these words later? Which method helps me the most: writing, listening, or saying them out loud? This kind of reflection turns a simple study session into a learning opportunity that actually works for you. And if a method isn't helping, that's okay. Metacognition is about noticing what isn't working and trying something different. Journaling. Another powerful method is journaling. Writing things down helps you organize your thoughts and see them clearly. You don't need to write long essays. Even just a few sentences work. Today I was focused when I studied, but I got distracted after 20 minutes. Next time I'll take a short break after 15. That's metacognition in action. You're not just recording your day, you're learning from it. You can even keep a small notebook or use your phone to write one quick thought at the end of the day, like, what did I learn about myself today? Which strategy helped me the most? These simple reflections are powerful because they guide your learning and growth. Asking better questions. Another key habit is asking yourself better questions. The way we think is often shaped by the questions we ask. Instead of thinking, why am I so bad at this? Try asking, what could I try differently next time? What part of this is actually going well? These questions shift your mind from feeling stuck to feeling curious. And curiosity is what drives improvement. Self-monitoring during tasks. While doing a task, you can practice self-monitoring. This means paying attention to your thoughts and actions while you're doing something. For example, if you're in a conversation and start to feel nervous, notice it. Ask yourself quietly, why am I feeling nervous? What am I afraid of? Maybe you realize you're worried about making a grammar mistake. That awareness allows you to breathe, slow down, and keep going. After the conversation, take a moment to reflect. What went well? What can I improve next time? This way, even everyday moments become learning experiences. Learning from setbacks. You can also use metacognition after something doesn't go as planned. Imagine you failed a test or had a bad day at work. It's easy to just feel frustrated and stop there. Metacognition means looking at the situation calmly and asking, what exactly didn't work? What was in my control? What can I do differently next time? These questions don't change the past, but they prepare you for a better future. And that's the whole point. Planning ahead. Another simple and effective technique is planning ahead. Before you start a task, whether it's writing an email, studying, or having a difficult conversation, take a moment to pause. Ask yourself, what steps should I take? What problems might come up? How can I handle them? By thinking ahead, you set yourself up for success and reduce stress along the way. Take just 1 minute to think about your approach before starting any task. Ask yourself, what's my goal? What steps will help me get there? What should I watch out for? These small questions help you focus and avoid going in the wrong direction. And when the task is finished, take a moment to review. Did I do what I planned? What would I change next time? Metacognition isn't about being perfect. It's not about controlling every single thought. Instead, it's about becoming aware of your mental habits so you can choose better ones. It's about being honest with yourself, not judgmental, just curious. If something didn't work, that doesn't mean you failed. It just means you noticed. And noticing is a win. Every time you pause to reflect, ask yourself a thoughtful question, or adjust your plan, you're practicing metacognition. Over time, these small moments add up. If you're wondering where to start, keep it simple. Take 1 moment today to reflect on something you did. Ask yourself one meaningful question. Write down one short sentence about what you noticed. You don't have to do everything at once. You just need to start. Metacognition isn't a switch you flip on. It's a habit. And the more you practice, the more natural it becomes. Remember, you are not just a learner. You are also your own guide. The better you understand your thinking, the more power you have to shape your future. Metacognition and personal growth. Now that we understand what metacognition is and how to practice it, let's look at something even deeper, how it can help you grow as a person. Metacognition isn't just about learning more effectively or becoming more productive. It's also about being more mindful, building confidence, becoming more resilient. It helps you know yourself on a deeper level and use that knowledge to move forward, even when life feels challenging. Mindfulness. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to move from one task to the next without thinking. Phones are buzzing, notifications are coming in, and our minds are always busy. Practicing metacognition gives you permission to slow down. You start to notice what's happening inside your mind, your thoughts, feelings, and habits. You stop living on autopilot and begin living with awareness. That awareness is the heart of mindfulness. When you are mindful, you make better decisions. Respond instead of react. Listen more carefully. Speak more thoughtfully. You become present not just in your actions, but also in your thinking. Confidence. Real confidence doesn't come from always getting things right. It comes from understanding your process, knowing your strengths, being honest about your challenges. Metacognition helps you notice patterns. You learn what works for you and what doesn't. Slowly, you start to trust yourself more. Instead of asking, "Am I good enough?" you start asking, "What do I need to grow?" This shift in mindset is powerful. Confidence isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Metacognition helps you see your progress, even when it's slow or quiet. It helps you give yourself credit for small wins, which is how real confidence grows. Life doesn't always go the way we plan. Sometimes things don't work out, or we face setbacks. That's where resilience comes in, your ability to keep going, even after things go wrong. And metacognition actually helps you build that resilience. When something doesn't go the way you hoped, metacognition gives you tools to reflect and learn. Instead of thinking, "I failed," you can ask yourself, "What did I learn from this? What can I try differently next time?" This way of thinking helps you bounce back faster, become more flexible, and handle life's ups and downs more smoothly. Resilience isn't about never falling, it's about knowing how to get back up. Here's something important. You don't need to be perfect. Growth doesn't start with having all the answers. It starts with curiosity about your own mind. Simple questions like, "Why did I feel that way? What helped me today?" The more curious you are, the more you learn. The more you reflect, the more you grow. Each small step helps you shape your life with more purpose and intention. Metacognition doesn't just help you learn, it helps you live. It helps you face challenges with a calm mind, see yourself clearly, and act with understanding instead of judgment. It helps you become the kind of person who can pause, think, and move forward with confidence. This journey isn't about doing everything perfectly. It's about showing up curious about your thoughts, your habits, and what you can become. That's where personal growth truly begins, not outside, but inside your own mind. So, let's pause for a moment and bring it all together. Today, we've gone on a journey into the world of metacognition, the place where your thoughts become something you can actually observe, question, and improve. By just listening to this, by choosing to understand your mind a little more, you've already started practicing metacognition. That's worth recognizing. The first step toward growth is simply paying attention. We started by asking, what is metacognition? We learned it means thinking about your thinking, being aware of how you learn, how you solve problems, how you react to challenges, and how you make decisions. It's the ability to pause and ask, what's happening in my mind right now? Is this helpful? Could I try something different? Even that small pause can create real change. We explored how metacognition helps us become better learners. When you understand how you learn best, you stop wasting time on methods that don't work and start focusing on what does. You stop copying others and start creating your own strategies. That's where real confidence begins, not from getting everything right, but from knowing what helps you move forward. We also talked about the obstacles, things that can get in the way, fear of failure, self-doubt, and perfectionism. These are normal human experiences. Everyone struggles with them. Metacognition gives us a way to face our feelings without being controlled by them. It lets us notice, I feel afraid, but I don't have to let it stop me. That kind of awareness helps build resilience, the ability to keep going even when things feel hard. We also explored simple ways to practice metacognition. You can take just a few minutes each day to reflect. Ask better questions, write down your thoughts after a task, plan ahead, and review your process. These are small habits, but over time they can make a big difference. You don't need to change everything at once. Just start with one thought, one question, or one moment to pause and pay attention. That's where it all begins. Finally, we saw how this practice connects to something even bigger, personal growth. When you think about your thinking, you start living with more awareness. You become more mindful. You make decisions with care. You trust yourself more because you know yourself better. This kind of self-awareness doesn't just make you a better student or worker, it helps you become a more grounded, confident, and thoughtful person. Someone who doesn't just react to life, but responds with clarity. Before we finish, here are a few questions to think about. You don't need to answer them right now, just let them sit with you. When was the last time you really paid attention to your thinking? Not just what you were thinking, but how you were thinking. What did you learn about yourself today? What one small change could you make starting today to think more clearly and kindly about your own thoughts? Maybe it's slowing down when you feel overwhelmed. Maybe it's writing one line in your journal before bed. Or maybe it's simply noticing the voice in your head and asking, is this helping me right now? These small changes are powerful. They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be honest. Even taking a few minutes after this episode to journal, reflect, or say your thoughts out loud to yourself can make a big difference. Speaking or writing about your thoughts helps you understand them more deeply. That's how real growth begins, not just by listening, but by reflecting and applying. Before we wrap up, I want to thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your focus. And thank you for your openness. These topics aren't always easy, but your willingness to listen, learn, and grow, both in English and in life, is inspiring. I hope today's episode helped you feel more in control of your thoughts, more aware of your process, and more connected to your own journey. If you found something useful here, Feel free to listen again or share this with someone who might need it too. I'll be back next time with another topic to help you grow your language skills and your life skills. Until then, take care of your mind, stay curious, and keep thinking about your thinking. Remember, you're doing better than you think.